That's interesting that you're saying that an owner of the property that you're writing about provided those. Are some of those salt vats still on the property?
I need to go across the street and see. There used to be one. We were told that Grandmama had given one to Brookgreen Gardens.
You are listening to Historyman, the platform for historians, curators, and authors to tell their stories of the American Revolution, walk in the footsteps of heroes, and proclaim freedom reigns. On today's episode, we have Corinne Hoch, the regent of the Carolina Gold Daughters of the American Revolution, state chair of the Daughters of the American Revolution Project Patriot Committee, a board member of the South Carolina Rev War Trust or Revolutionary War Trust, a program chair for the Georgetown 250, and now author. So welcome, Corinne.
Thank you so much, Eric.
I met you recently at a Daughters of the American Revolution convention where y'all had me there, graciously had me there with my comic books, my graphic novels that we are trying to publish here and get out to the children in the state. And I thank you so much for having us there as part of your program or part of the program you have for the annual event. But tell us a little bit about this author project that you have. You've written a book. Tell us a little bit about the book.
Well, I'm so excited about it, Eric. I can't quite believe it. But on October the 22nd, I am launching my first book titled Woodlawn Plantation, an enhanced memoir. It's about one of the earliest residences on the creek of Murrell's Inlet. And that's where I live now, full time. But our pre-revolutionary summer home was lost to fire in November 1980, and the house whispered to me, insisting that I tell her story, not at all that story that I thought I was going to write, but in my foreword, I attempt to provide a roadmap to help the reader understand how to navigate the terrain of the book. First, I paint a vivid picture of the night we lost Woodland. And it's kind of confusing, too, because Woodland was called Woodlawn Plantation, woodlands. So try researching and try comprehending that. It's complex. Fireworks illuminated the sky at Woodland Landing, and neighbors watched. Part of Murrell's Inlet history for 240 years was reduced to ashes. Self-proclaimed historian Clark Wilcox documented his initial thoughts and feelings about the loss in a letter to Woodland's owners, my parents, on December 12, 1980. So I chose this longtime Murrell's Inlet Hermitage resident to narrate the stories of Woodlawn Plantation in the form of postscripts to his letter. His postscripts preface each chapter, and at times intersperse them as noted by Bookman font, italicized. Chapter 1 introduces the first visitors to the land at the inlet end of Wachusaw Trail, where Woodland would be built 222 years later. In Chapter 2, I use editorial privilege to locate the 1526 Spanish settlement of San Miguel del Guape on Winya Bay. Chapter 3 features the female pirate Anne Bonny, who may also have sipped the artesian water in the 1600s on the bank over which Woodland would later reign. Chapters 4 through 22 identify the actual owners of Woodlawn Plantation from 1740 to 1980, based upon my extensive research over a 10-year period. The resultant character development is solely a reflection of my imagination as I was guided by true historians over the years, whose writings compelled me to attribute personal characteristics to a tinderbox and to place myself in the different times and places of its owners. I confess that I may have imagined what might have been as I carefully wove a tapestry, inserting some of the major events occurring in and around Murrell's Inlet over the years, including the Revolutionary War. Weekly visits to the gravesite of Clark's sister and longtime Brookgreen Gardens storyteller Genevieve Chandler, as I tend the Blaine Memorial United Methodist Church gardens, continue to provide inspiration for me There is a quiet communion between past and present that settles over those grounds, a sense of voices muted by time, but eager to be heard again, stones weathered by centuries, the hush of Spanish moss, the mewing of the peacocks, and the salt-laden breezes all conspire to invoke memory and reverence. My intent in the ensuing pages is not merely to chronicle Woodland's lineage, but to resurrect a vanished world, to set it shimmering briefly in the reader's imagination as it so vividly does in mine, in seeking out the truth between names etched in old records and tales handed down through generations. I found that fact and folklore often blur, yet the enduring spirit of Woodlawn Plantation persists, whispering through the marshes and the live oaks, inviting each new visitor or reader to listen, to wonder, and perhaps to dream along with me. May you too find the echoes of Woodland's legacy lingering in these stories, and may the journey through her history offer not only understanding, but a sense of kinship with all who have called this stretch of low country home.
So, Corinne, what's the name of the book again?
The name is Woodlawn Plantation, an Enhanced Memoir.
The genesis of your book, is this your property? Is this your property, right? Down in Murrell's Inlet.
It was our property.
Was your property? Okay.
Yeah. As I have learned, the house, the last almost 50 years of ownership stayed in my family. Granddaddy had kept it. He had rented it with 5 other men and used it as a hunting fishing lodge in the 1920s. And so Grandmama would not ever come down, and she said she wasn't going to share a house. And so she bought it in 1932. We were always told that she had bought it in 1929. But she bought 157 and a half acres, half of Wachesaw and half of Richmond Hill plantations. And she was reared on a plantation in western North Carolina, Riverdale. And so she created Woodlawn Plantation. And she was always looking out for her children. And she made sure that they had farms in various and sundry places, and also that they had a river plat and then additional acreage. But she actually gave Mama the big house 6 months before I was born. And we just loved it and didn't really know much about its history because not much is written, and what is written is not necessarily accurate. I found out that I had to sift through deeds, and a lot of records were moved inland to save them from Sherman's march to the sea, which is kind of ironic because when they moved them inland, it was around Columbia and they were burned. So I've had to do a lot of digging in order to find out. And literally, Woodland was the seashore estate to Laurel Hill Plantation. And that's what I found out. And it was built for William Wades. And so as I documented all of the people and the families who owned it, the Flaggs, the Austins, the Wades, Francis Withers, and his brother Robert, you go through a pretty elite group down here. And the planters, we were called the Gold Coast for a reason. Rice made this area. Indigo, rice, of course, naval stores.
So you raised indigo on that, or the indigo was raised on the property?
No.
Or just shipped out through there, or what?
This property was just the seashore estate.
What is a seashore
It
estate?
was
Is that just like a Airbnb type of thing? What is that?
kind of during the summer. It kept them healthy. If the every plantation had on the east, it would be they would grow rice and the crops, well, predominantly rice, but during the summer months, the all of the planters moved everything in their house practically to the seashore estate, and it needed to be close enough so that they could go back and forth to all of their plantations and make sure that things were the rice was being taken care of properly. But at that time, they didn't know that the illnesses were created by mosquitoes. That wasn't discovered until I think it might have been the 1800s.
So, do we have any tie-ins to the American Revolutionary War?
We actually do. I've gone through and I've documented all of the, and the scope is really. I didn't want to suffer from scope creep. It all centers around the house and who owned it and how the owners actually served the colonies during the American Revolution. So I have all of that. I do a lot of stage setting. In chapter 4, I talk about, I posed a question, just how does a small country, how does it manage a country that's larger than itself, so far away? And I just go through the history and how, what led up to it, to the Revolutionary War, and how the owners and their children actually ended up serving.
Who were the owners on this property during the American Revolutionary War?
Well, the house was built for William Wades and his son John Wades.
Spell that for me.
Waties.
Okay.
And he actually organized systems that supported the troops, so to speak. One of his big things to do, or it was his discovery, salt is an important supply during the war. And so along the coast, salt systems were installed and then shipped all over to support the soldiers.
I always wondered where the salt came from, where, when the British packed their hams or packed their meat in barrels to ship them across the ocean or ship them into the backcountry, they had to pack them with salt. And sometimes if they didn't pack them good enough, well, a lot of times the humidity and just the temperatures and stuff spoiled the meat before they got to the soldiers out in the field. And I've often wondered, where did this salt originate from? And that's interesting that you're saying that an owner of the property that you're writing about provided those. Are some of those salt vats still on the property?
I need to go across the street and see. There used to be one. We were told that Grandmama had given one to Brookgreen Gardens, but I've not ever found any documentation of that. And Grandmama didn't give a whole lot away, so it doesn't exactly fit her what she would have done. She was more of a business person. But we had an artesian, we always called it an artesian well, but it was a spring that came out of the oyster encrusted bluff, and it was retained by what I was always told was a salt vat. And when I was growing up, I didn't pay it a whole lot of attention, but it's rather large. And
when you say rather large, how give me an idea. As large as a table?
Really larger than a table. It was probably maybe 6 feet by or 8 feet by 6 feet or something like that. And it seemed to have been made out of slate.
Okay.
I know it was gray, and but the artesian water would out of a line and a spigot, and it would just be there, and it was overflowing half the time. But artesian water is it's spring water. It's so great. Mama used to say that grits tasted better with artesian water, and all of the locals would come by and just fill up jugs with artesian water.
Well, it was a big thing. We have several famous artesian water places around the state. We got Blenheim up in the
Yeah,
PD area, and then we
yeah,
got the Healing Springs down around Blackville is very popular, and everybody goes out there and they fill up their jugs and take it back and talk about the healing properties of the water. There's one in Richland County too that is very popular. But that's interesting. Any other tidbits of Revolutionary War lore from that property?
well, Captain William Alston, William of Brookgreen, at one time he owned Woodland, and of course we know that he did a lot of things. He himself profited from wartime trade, and he invested his wealth in loans to the state of South Carolina and sent funds for the relief of Boston from the intolerable acts. And he became a captain in the American Revolutionary War, and he joined the planters who fought with Francis Marion. And while Captain Austin was away, he allowed his Brookgreen plantation land to be used to store powder for the protection of others, and including those on Snow's Island and the Cape Fear. And he also sent some of his own slaves to work on Georgetown and Charleston defense fortifications. He was in the Battle of Cowpens, so helped Morgan defeat Bannister Tarleton. He actually fell gravely ill as a direct result of being around there, but he did make it home, and shortly thereafter he died. But I know that I was curious. I had read in a number of different books about Lord Cornwallis selecting Brookgreen Plantation, which is just 3 miles away from us. But at the time, it was owned by William Austin. But he was away, and his second wife, Rachel Moore Austin, had to share their plantation with Lord Cornwallis and his men.
Wow.
And I kind of doubted the truth of that, but I no longer doubt it, because he was in the area at that specific point in time, and Brookgreen was a beautiful place. And there is a cute little story about how Cornwallis asked to meet Little Washington, and that was Washington Austin, who grew up and became an incredible painter. But Rachel Austin was so afraid that Cornwallis would do something to her child, her children, her lands, and everything. But as the story goes, the men just were tickled with Little Washington, and they would pat him on the cheek. And
I want to ask you a question that we ask everyone that comes on the podcast, or at least if we have time, we ask everyone: what does liberty mean to you?
I think in preparation for our 250, and also in preparation for a presentation I did for a flag retirement ceremony a few years ago, I've really thought about it. And all of the regimental flags were carried by men who meant it. And those men who chose to lay down their lives for their beliefs, some even exhausted their fortunes, as we know, in many cases, for our freedom and for our liberty. And I guess liberty means, to me, the awareness of the freedoms we have and the ability to provide the vigilance to continue to support and to maintain our freedom. I think that's what liberty means to me. I've just delved into the theme of liberty. We look at the crescent or the gorget on your cap, on the soldiers' caps, in the Moultrie flag that protected them, but it also continues to protect us, their actions. And I don't know what their dreams were. I don't even know if they knew what liberty meant, but I know that England was so constrained financially and fighting all of its wars elsewhere that it didn't pay attention to us over here. And it just made our decisions for us and constantly increased money we had to pay them to help them continue fighting their wars and maintaining their little country without our own representation. We wanted to stand alone. They didn't understand us. They didn't protect us against pirates. They didn't protect us. They really didn't even come over here to see what we were struggling with. And they were just choking us financially and letting us be barraged by other things. So we had to free ourselves so that we could support ourselves and do our thinking for ourselves. But if we don't continue to be aware of the importance of doing that, then we haven't learned anything at all.
That's very well put. Well, as we finish up, tell us the name of the book and how people can get a hold of it. You've got a launch date coming up, and you've got a publisher that's releasing this book. So let's get the word out there to everyone so they can grab a hold of that and delve into a little history of the Gold Coast there between Charleston and Myrtle Beach, right? Murrell's Inlet.
That's right, 90 miles north of Charleston. Well, the name of the book is Woodlawn Plantation, an enhanced memoir. It's really all about the house. We were always told that it was pre-revolutionary, and by George, it is. And there is it's published by Class Publishing in Pawleys Island, and it will be launched at the Movable Feast on Wednesday, October the 22nd at 11 a.m. at Lee's Inlet Kitchen, right here in Murrell's Inlet. And if you'd like to make reservations or purchase the book, because I'll talk about the book, and you can get in touch with Class Publishing by calling 843-235-9600. And it will be available at local bookstores in the area. Come to Murrell's Inlet, come to Pawleys, come to Georgetown, and pick up the book.
Well, Corinne, thank you so much. I look forward to reading the book, and I look forward to seeing you again at some of these events around the state. So thank you so much.
Well, Eric, thank you ever so much.